Yes, sir. What's up? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am one of your co-hosts, Justin of Working It Out Across Generations.
And this is Dr. Lynne
And
in the house.
Yes, thank you. And this is where we come together to have generational conversations around everyday conflict that we as people are, experiencing and living through every single day. And the reality is, we need more spaces to talk, to have more conversations. We need more inviting perspectives of differing lenses. And so this is where I think we provide that space, one of the spaces that we provide. And so today we have a really, really cool topic, and I'm going to let this pass over to you.
Yeah, it's something that I know. I've been in the working world for, let's see, I started working at 13. So a long time.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. And this conversation for at least the past 20 years, I would say, has come up. What is considered professional? Is there right or wrong? I think that we have both met lots of people who feel that there is. And now I think there's much more pushback as to whether or not these strict definitions of professional and professionalism are really still sufficient today, if they really apply today, or have things changed, and can being professional be shown in different ways. And that's what we are talking about today, hoping that you're tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. I see we have some folks tuning in today, so thank you for that. And hopefully you will comment as to whether or not you've experienced this conversation and what are your thoughts on it. What's professional? I like this topic because I'm going to tell you, I've been in the workforce for probably 50 years now, and I've seen professional change. And I've also experienced myself kind of bumping up against the definition as well. And I don't know that there's been significant conversation around it. I think there's been things like changes where there's a memo or an email or a meeting where people say, this is how we dress here. This is what's considered professional. This is not. Please wear this. Please do not wear that. Please say this. Please speak in this way. Please do not put these things on your wall or on your desk. And I've seen that. But real conversation around it and the significance, even the origin, maybe not the origin, but what does it mean to be professional to begin with? Where does that come from, and who gets to set that definition, and why? I think has not really been a lot of conversation around that. I think that there's more pushback to have the conversation now because a lot of things are coming up, and we're going to talk about some of those things today. But I don't think that people are really talking about it and why it's important. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of those things that you started to mention, hair, right, the way we speak, even the things that we put on our desk, the imagery that we, want to come back to every day that keeps us going. I think a lot of that has to do with identity. And so when you set such standards, when you set, things of that nature, right, I think that you're right. There's not a lot of conversation or even questioning around, well, what do we want here? What do we see as professional? Or what were we taught to believe is professional? And how is that showing up in our business, right? Is that making sense for where we're headed and all of these things? And so when we talk about just the way that people show up, I think that, you're absolutely right. We've started to move into more of pushing boundaries, but also, kind of changing or challenging the status quo that we all know, right? The whole dapper down wherever you are, right? Even schools are very much into, dress codes and specific things on that dress code. And I think a lot of these things, when we talk about the way people wear their hair, right? When we talk about all of these things, it has a bigger meaning. It has a bigger landing for them. And when you strip that away from people, or if it's not necessarily invited in your mission statements and all these other things, I think that it does become challenging when walking those lines of, if we aren't having this conversation, then how healthy is the conversation really going to go? And so I think that, people got to be able to, got to have the freedom to show up who they are, ask who they are when they're there. And then also, we have to do a better job of just even asking these questions of, who are we as this environment, right? What do we want this really to look like? And what work are we willing to do to make sure that we bring this into fruition?
Yeah.
And so it's easier to have a goal, not a goal, like a dream or any of these things, right? And then people just kind of feed that. But even with things like this, with schools and all of that nature, we definitely need more conversations around, if not necessarily if we're excluding this, how do we just invite more of people, coming in where they are and fully comfortable in who they are.
Yeah,
so it's very interesting.
I think that it is interesting. There's no question, because I think that what you've brought up are things that people need to be talking about, but I don't hear a lot of conversation. And I think when you don't have conversation, you're bound to have more pushback. There are just some people who just naturally going to push back. And the less you say to them in terms of explanation and even motivation for why they should dress professional, the more they're going to push the boundaries, because they really do. They aren't hearing from you. They aren't hearing why this is important or why this represents who you are. When you make blanket statements about this is just who we are, or this is our company,
right? How we do things,
right? This is how we've always done things,
right? Get with it or don't.
Yep. Right?
Exactly.
When you do that, there are people who are going to comply. There's no question. There are people who are going to toe the line and comply. But there's always, even if they say there's always that one, right? There's at least that one who's going to see how much they can get away with. And they're happy. A lot of times I've found that they're happy to explain why they think what they're wearing or doing is professional, because they don't really have anything to go up against, right? Because all you've said is this is the way you need to do things if you're going to be professional. You haven't really told them why. I know coming up, goodness, I can remember, just like I said, I started working at 13, but I was a camp counselor. But even with camp counselors, right, as teenagers,
you working with kids, that's not
everybody wants
easy
to tell you what to do anyway.
Absolutely.
But they certainly want to tell you how to do your job in a professional way. But I think my mom in particular, maybe my dad, prepared us with that word in mind. Like, I heard professional growing up so much. This is how you show people that you're professional, right? If you were going into any kind of company suit, you had to wear a suit, nothing less. And my mom was very formal anyway. So, and she loved to dress, suits were her thing anyway. So she had her own bias in what was professional, but she was very clear that you going to a company, you're wearing a suit. That is the way to be professional. There's all, and the way that you spoke, you had to speak proper English, or you were not professional in the work environment, no matter what your work environment was. And it was interesting to me, no one ever really got around to the piece about how you speak to people. Because for me, if you're going to tell me how to dress, how to wear my hair, all the things that come with professionalism, why aren't you talking about the way that people speak to one another? We're busy, or at least I certainly heard growing up, things like accents aren't professional.
Right.
And especially, I know that people who come from other countries, that was talked about, but not as much as folks from the South in the United States.
Mhm.
There was a real bias and stereotype about someone with a Southern accent not being professional. And my mom was from the South, and I can tell you that she could go in and out of the accent, which I know a lot of people do, because when you're home in your homeland and with your people, you're comfortable. You're going to speak the way you all speak. But if you caught her at an office or at a school, she had to come to school for us. She was straight up professional. Because I can remember even in my day, in elementary school, my mom was always the best dressed parent in the parent conferences or whatever she came to, our performances. Everybody else was a little more relaxed, but not my mom. She was going to put on the sharpest thing. Even if we talk about when you go into a religious environment, right? So professional wear was, we went to church. And so professional wear
Yep.
was,
Yep.
Lord, y'all. I'm sorry. I didn't like going to church until I was a teenager and we changed churches. But and we had a gospel choir for teenagers. But in any case, I digress. But I didn't like going to church as it was. And we had to dress up, and I mean dress up. And anybody out there know what I'm talking about? I know y'all do. If you were at my age or even 10, 20 years behind me, and you went to church, you understand what I'm talking about. But it was very clear that there were certain things that were unprofessional, including things like personal phone calls on the job. Now, we didn't have phones. I go way back. We did not have cell phones. And so if you had a phone at your desk, being caught on a personal call, oh no, that was close to being written up if they caught you enough times. Oh, absolutely. You would not to take personal calls during work, and let's not even work in a place. Like my first 20 years in the workplace were in schools. So the last thing you want is to have somebody from the office say you have a call. It's your mother or your sister. Considered completely unprofessional. So I've seen things change over the years. Like now in schools, things as simple as what do students call you, right? As teachers, we had to call Mrs. So and so, Mr. So and so. We weren't a lot of male teachers, but anyway, but never by first name. And I can remember my mom saying, well, when the schools went downhill was when students were allowed to call their teachers by their first name. Absolutely.
That's when things went downhill. Specifically, that is what caused the downhill.
Yes, because it was equated with respect.
Yeah. Okay.
And professional. Like you are modeling for students.
Right.
Who they will be and how they will be when they go out into the work world. And so, when you get to a college, professor so-and-so. I mean, to have my name up here as Dr. Lynne, my mom, God bless her, she's not alive anymore. She would be mortified. Like, no, they need to be calling you Dr. Lynne Maureen Hurd. And that needs to be spelled out. Oh, there's no question in my mind that she didn't change that much over the years. Yeah. That there was just those things that you were not going to tell her did not equate with being professional.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You said a lot there, and I think speaking on my experience and my generation, who's very much with bringing things to the forefront and addressing things, and even sometimes without a plan, burning stuff down to the ground, knowing that it just doesn't feel authentic, right? Or people don't feel invited. And so I think one of the things that I noticed very early on, being that I started working at 10, right, which is kind of interesting, and having that perspective was, yeah, I definitely saw, things around or heard things around, hair and dress, and, you want to look the part for this, right? You want to, kind of had to go with matching your words and matching your energy, kind of putting the whole thing together of like how you dress. And I think as I got older, I'm really glad that you had said like even just like taking phone calls or like joking around with
Oh my
coworkers
gosh, yes.
or in schools joking around with your friends, right? And so that for me is when it started to become like, you know, like that's really when imagery, I guess, started to hit for me when it came to professionalism and what that looks like and really like if you were to paint a picture, what would that picture look like?
Yeah.
And so I got like as the class clown who like naturally was funny. There was times where I definitely took it too far, right? But who naturally was funny, like I was in communities where the principal or assistant principal or whatever was called for nothing, like all the time, right? Or we would stop the class all the time and all these things when we're like literal middle schoolers. And if you think about it, like it's not that we don't know like okay time and place, it's more of what standards are you trying to set and put in place for young people to really like be young and to be themselves and to learn and to have opportunities to learn, right? To even learn what time and place really looks like. And so it really started to become more of a like how we interact kind of thing for me and not just how you look or how you talk or all of these things. I feel like the adults in my life, also being that I went to private white institutions, PWIs, my entire life. And some of these were, you know, prestigious, and one of them was just more like the principal wanted you to call him headmaster, whatever that's about. I don't know what that's about, but I felt uncomfortable even with that addressing the man, and I got called to his office to get him out. So that was already something else. But I think that how we interact, right, like that really is real where I started to think about, okay, professionalism, like what does that really look like? How do we speak? Like the words we use, like how are we even able to have a balance of joking around and still getting work done? Like all of these different things I started to explore just outside of the whatever meets the eye. However, I do recognize that, things like hair and things like, the certain styles of clothing, right? Like there are so many deeper meanings to those things and those elements of people. And that's part of what makes us who we are. And while I was definitely exposed to that, right? Like you got to have a haircut, got to have your hair looking a certain way. You got to, the shirt's got to be buttoned up till this button and not past. And if it is, get a tie and like.
Well, speaking of that, what do you think of ears? Because
Yeah.
what do you think of?
So I thought so ears is the it stands for Effective Alternative Reconciliation Services. It was a company, foundation, whatever you want, company you want to call it. That was very much about youth empowerment, providing young people in very tough situations with the skills to as we talked about, like add to their toolbox, to know there's another way of dealing with things, to know there's things out there in life bigger than what they've been exposed to. And so while this was huge for me and I absolutely loved the content of the work, the whole dressing up part absolutely pissed me off. I had to wake up early in the summer, like already just to do that, right? And I got to dress up, and I got to whatever, and it took me a while to really understand what that was about. And there's so many other lessons around it outside of just like professionalism. It's a discipline thing. It's a mental rep thing. Like it really is um, a deeper thing for me and for everyone, right? But absolutely, it pissed me off. I was young. I'm like, why am I like out here?
10. You started at 10.
Mad young.
Wearing suits.
I'm
Day.
like, bro, this is ridiculous. It's work getting to work. I'm like, this makes no sense. I'm out here compromising myself. That's what it felt like at times. I'm compromising myself for the sake of whatever. And of course, when you're younger, it's more dramatic than that. So I hated it, but I saw the value in it because I knew, really, what y'all were instilling in us. I could tell the different stuff around it that was outside of just how we present ourselves, which is a very valuable factor of how we coexist, right? The way we present ourselves. However, I don't think it's the full story, and I don't think that it needs to be so not dress codey, which, I feel that, but like, again, I think it needs to be more, right, not as strict. Like, it's got to be more inviting of different, of other, right? I think that some of the most beautiful artwork out there is complex and has so many different elements to it, pulled from different places, pulled from different sources, to make that new masterpiece.
Yeah. But part of it too, and I know that it ties into the thinking when I was growing up, is that how can you see yourself somewhere, right, that considers this as professional dress if you don't get in that dress? So to be able to 10, 12, 15, 16, right, as a young person, to be able to be someone who's delivering workshops to other young people who look like you but don't dress like you, to adults, some who dress like you and some who did not, right? How can you envision that future for yourself if you aren't dressed the way that people are in that environment? And again, today there's a lot of different ways to be in the workforce. I recognize that, and not everybody dresses up, even teachers, right? That's the other thing. That's the other place where my mom said it. Education went downhill.
Teachers starting
teachers
yeah.
not, because teachers really did have a very strict dress code when I was coming up. And I'm going to tell y'all, we had one that was ridiculous. It was totally sexist. And that was, people could not believe that when I was in elementary school, girls could not wear pants. And I literally, if it was cold outside, yes, my mom would take us to school and we'd stand in the doorway, in the inside doorway, and we had to take put the skirt over the pants we were wearing and take the pants off. I know, like, true story. Where's my sister, or where's the people that's my age? Hey, come on, rep for me.
That's absolutely
doggone well. That's what we did.
That's absolutely insane. I'm just gonna resign from the school before I have to do that.
It didn't last my entire elementary.
Yeah, but geez.
But it definitely, I remember that so well, because I remember thinking, what in the world has pants got to do with anything? I couldn't understand why I couldn't wear pants. And come on, y'all who understand this, right? Identify as women, right? Pants even in corporate for women, right? Come on, even Hillary Clinton, it's not even that far back. How many people talked about her because she wore pantsuits? Don't tell me that there aren't, right? You see, you
right.
Remember that.
I remember that. That was interesting.
And it's really being professional. It's so many things to so many people, but we still have many places where we are very stuck, strict, resolute. This is the way. Don't even let me bring into the fold the idea that the professional standards come from systemic racism. That's a whole nother conversation, but just as real for folks. So looking at professionalism, or what is professional, I think is a great topic, because I think there's lots of people that have something to say about it and have experienced it. If you've worked at all in places, if you worked at all other than for yourself, I'm sure you've come up against what people consider to be professional, what kinds of conversations you should be having at work. You had talked about that, talking to coworkers. I know I take the hit every time I go into maybe a supermarket or like a Target or something, and young people you're stocking the shelves, but you're also so busy talking to your coworker, right? That for me, that's unprofessional, because you're not paying attention to the customers.
Yeah.
But again, maybe that's not what you consider unprofessional,
right.
But we all have this thing, but it comes from a very, what do I want to say, common definition of what's professional, and that is being challenged in many ways now. You have casual, right? What do you have? Casual Fridays. I remember when those came in. You have, what's it called?
Pajama day?
No.
That's
pajama day. But what do they call it now when you casual corporate? What is it? oh my gosh, what do they call it now when you can wear like pants and a sweater? Oh, come on, somebody help me. Somebody write in.
I don't know
Some
what the
guy.
hell she's talking
Yeah, because
about.
there's you know what it's called. We just can't think of the term right
Okay.
now, but you
We'll
know
come
what
back to
it's
y'all
called.
next week with
Yes,
that one.
yes. Okay, well, in any case,
That's real though.
yes,
That's very real. And I think, for at least in the United States, right, we've tried to put, uniforms
yeah.
on types of people. And I think that, on every type of person. And
Hmm.
so, again, when we talk about just what these things are, right, and what we identify with and what we don't, right, like we just need more openness to that conversation. And I
Hmm.
think that I'm all for, in some respects, in some principles, okay, like this is just who we are, how we do things, right, when it comes to code of conduct, things
Hmm.
of that nature, right. But let people be who they are. That's definitely my approach, right? And the way that you talk about, seeing that at Target, right, thinking like that's unprofessional, I see that as like, bro, like we're working, it's a long shift, we might as well get a laugh or two in the here, so make sure that we're somehow enjoying it, enjoying our each other, right. It's way more of a uplifting thing when I look at it, and that just goes to show why I think our show is sick, because a lot of people, I think, my age see things like that, even
Hmm.
though other generations might see things like that the way you do,
Right,
of well, I still need help. Like, you guys are joking and I still need help. Like,
right.
I can see that. Right. And so, these perspectives, right, they're welcome. They're welcomed
Hmm.
here, and we need them more in other spaces. But the reality is, there are still some conflicting items up for debate
Yeah.
to this day, unfortunately. And we want to bring a couple of those items to you and start to decipher a few of them.
Yeah.
So, first one that we came up with, 3 items that are up for debate: hair.
Yeah.
This is huge. I think hair is a very big piece of identity for a lot of people, and rightfully so. And as I said, considering that, we live in a country where, honestly, hair in certain cultures was not celebrated. It was, in fact, exterminated and seen as indicators of different, which at a time that was not today, it was not as inviting for that.
Right.
And so when we talk about people who have gone through that, and or people who know others that have gone through that, right? Like, these are things that I think really do strip people of spirit in a way. And I think hair is one of those things for a lot of people where, you know, if you're setting that standard, like, this is how we do things, this is how we look when we're here, and da 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 da. And if not even that, if you've even gone as far as to make it a whole meeting of, like, we want to call you in. The reality is, like, your hair and all, like, just making it a big deal. I think that there's a lot more questioning around that needs to be happening, in the sense of, why is that so not okay, or why is that so not professional,
Hmm.
um, and why can't that be something that's celebrated if it is something that's different from what you've seen and experienced.
Yeah, well, we have the whole Crown Act because African
Right.
Americans have been subjected to discrimination because of their hair, told that they can't work in certain environments. That it starts as early in school. I mean, really, if you following all that's going on, there are too many young people wear their hair like I do. I wear my hair in locks, and that's being policed in terms of how long, but
Even the accessories,
grooming, right?
in your
All of
locks,
that stuff.
that
So
could be enough.
for
Yeah.
the fact that the way people's hair grow out of their head is considered unprofessional is just insane to me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work. But that is one. When I was coming up, men could not have long hair. Absolutely not. You were
Mm.
not getting a job. And not even just in the corporate spaces. You were not getting a job if you were a man that had long hair.
Wow. I didn't know it was that deep.
Oh, it was that deep.
Wow.
Afros, all of that. Again, going into the Crown Act, but it it really is something that people need to pay attention to. We have two friends actually, who wear pink hair, right, or different colors. I can remember two coming up. My mom, it's like that would have been absolutely not. It
For
was
sure.
enough that I had to wait till I was 16 to actually be able to put color in my hair. But you certainly were not going to wear it in a way where you would be considered that it wasn't professional. So here's a big one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
appreciate that. Next, the styling of particular clothing, right? So I think here, I think one thing that comes up is, as I said, like your button down, right? Make sure it's buttoned up, at the certain length, right? And no more. And if it is, you got to add this to accessorize it and make it look like this because it'll show that, right? And it became this whole thing. I think even with, people having a problem with jeans. I've seen that in schools, or I've seen that in, especially corporate, or, a lot of workspaces, even, more laid back spaces, right? Where jeans are a problem, right? And even then, maybe it's, the a belt that you have on, right? Whatever it is, just however you're accessorizing or styling, as I said here, right? You have accessories in your hair, right? It's not even necessarily like, one place might have a problem with your hair. It's the way that you're styling it, right? It's the accessories, whatever attention that they feel like is bringing to you that's unwanted for more them than you, right? I think styling is everything. And hoodies, I definitely, I'm a hoodie guy, right?
And hats.
Hats,
No, you
right?
can't.
I'm
I know there's
Yep.
people even now today that are like, why is he wearing a hat indoors? That is not what men
Yep.
do, gentlemen do.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I've heard, why do you have a hat on this call? And my response is, I'm in the comfort of my own home. Give me a paycheck under your rules, and hey, whatever you want. Only so far, but that's definitely a big thing, right? How do you style yourself? And sometimes people take into account more the accessories and all this other stuff than really what you look like and what you're wearing and the material of what you're putting on. So it's really interesting. Like the hat thing too. I hear that all the time. I even heard that in schools. I'm like, bro, like, I'm a kid, right? A huge. I'm like, bro, I'm a kid, and there's already no uniform here. So I mean, unless there's like it's written down somewhere, sure. But if this is you on a personal, having a bad day and wanting to just pick at me, leave me alone. And adults don't really want to hear that from young people who are in tune enough to say, you're coming at my identity here. Yeah. And that's interesting.
Yeah. Somebody has something to say. I see we have a comment. Let's see what they got to say.
Awesome.
I want to add.
Males, yeah. Melissa, thank you. No long hair, no tattoos. Tattoos is huge. Yes. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Melissa.
Definitely, I think more inviting nowadays, but even then, placement, right? I think that's always been a huge thing. Your hands, no tats on your hands, no tats on your face, all of that stuff, and what that all means. And while we've definitely pushed, into a different direction of, being more free in the workforce and what that looks like and opening up these conversations, that's still a huge one that I've heard people say, I still get looked at weird, or I've still been, sized weird for my character, all because of my tattoos, when that's really another one of the purest ways that we can express ourselves.
And people have to wear, long jackets, long sleeves, or whatever.
Absolutely.
If they intend to keep
Thanks,
that job.
Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. Right?
Absolutely.
How can we forget about tattoos?
Absolutely. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's so huge. I appreciate that. And then last, the way people speak. You said it, accents, right? Where people come from, right? I think when you say to someone like, why do you talk like that? Or like, why'd you say it? Like, for me, it always was a bigger thing of like, this is where I come from. I'm from the Bronx. I'm from New York. We've got a little bit of that aggressiveness. We've got a little bit of, our own lingo here and things of that nature. And the reality is, like, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of the people who are in my life who have helped me be proud of who I am. And it's almost like an ode to those people, to where I come from, to my neighborhood and things of that nature, when I really do just get to speak and feel free in how I speak. But the reality is, the whole like proper English, right? Like, enunciate everything correctly and use the big words, even if it's, doesn't need to be there. Like, if you really want to be real. And I've really been in those communities, especially, PWIs, right? Like, not every one of them is the same. I will say that. But the ones that I went to, they were very much big on image, making sure that, everyone, as much as, they could be themselves as an individual, they were still individually a part of a bigger picture and a bigger collective, which was kind of along the lines of, we do things this way, we speak this way, we show up this way, and anyone who does different is like frowned upon. Mm-hmm. It's not even like weird or what, like, different. It's like frowned upon.
Yeah. Oh no, the frowned upon is absolutely true. Yeah. And I tell you, I know, as I said, my mom was very big on us making sure that we spoke proper English, but I can tell you right now, I noticed it yesterday. I was working with a group, and I said, I got to tell you, and I've noticed me more and more being me when I am delivering my work, because the way that I speak, number one, if you can understand what I'm saying, I'm good. Because if I've got to say it in my way, it's when I do workshops, I'm always encouraging someone who might be bilingual, but not as strong in English. Well, then say it in the way that you're comfortable, and and then somebody can translate it. But there's been a lot of conversation about professional speak and what's unprofessional, and I think that if you're going to push the envelope, one of the things that the way people speak and people correcting people's speech,
oh my God,
is definitely one of the debates.
Oh my gosh,
what is considered professional.
I've had to correct people trying to correct people. Like, even, again, I really do speak from the, I'm fresh out of school, right? So like, I'm really still more in that mode. But teachers, right? I'm like, you're an adult, like, you're the authority here. I get that. I totally get that. But this is literally how they feel comfortable speaking, how they feel comfortable saying it. You still get the message. You're just picking at how that message is getting relayed to you. Right. And that's way more to do with you than it is to do with our 15-year-old selves at the time.
Right. Not and even if you can say, well, okay, let's say we're bilingual here. So, because a lot of people who speak the way they want to speak also can speak proper English. Right. They just choose not to because it is not as comfortable and it's not the way that they express themselves. And they also know that it comes from a discriminatory place in many settings as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Getting into some, items that were up for debate.
Yeah.
Now we want to get into some factors to consider when pushing these boundaries. At the end of the day, things like dress code, things like mission statements, things like, those are boundaries, right? Those are not just expectations. Right. And so when pushing against, when challenging, we want to give you a few things to consider.
Yes, because there are, as I said before, there's always one, right? But
yeah. You didn't even have to do that. I would have. Yeah.
There's always one, but there's usually more.
Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But
and a lot of times that one is the one who's willing to speak up. But there are others in the room that agree. Right?
Oh yeah, because that's always been my thing. Yeah. Whether it worked or not, someone always came out from the shadows and said, I'm with you on that one. You couldn't say it out loud. And hey, that's cool. I'll say it.
Some folks want to keep their job.
I don't blame them.
And that's okay.
I don't blame them.
That's okay.
Send me home.
But if you are considering, right, pushing the boundaries, right, know your audience and your industry. Who are you speaking to? Who are you standing before? We do a lot of speaking engagements and workshops. So who's the audience and what is it that they are going to perceive? Right? Will they open up? Will they be willing to hear you? Whether it's right or wrong, people can close down just by the first look, right? Or just by you doing or wearing something or looking in a way that they already have ideas about, and they aren't positive ones. They're negative ideas. So who's your audience and what's the industry like, right? How do people tend to show up in that industry? Because you could be in an industry, for me, like if I'm walking into a place of work and people are cursing, right, for instance,
Right.
right,
That's
well, you could
huge.
be in an industry where that's how people speak, right? And so if that is your industry and you're pushing the boundaries around professionalism, then know who you're talking to, know what other people are doing. I think it's important, if you are pushing the boundaries, know these things, your audience, your industry, and then and still decide, like, is this something that I want to push, depending on the thing that you really want to push boundaries on.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
as that person, there were still things that I knew, okay, you probably don't want to push on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you do push on that here, it might block you from going into another direction within that said industry, right? So again, like I think one thing with audience that comes up for me was, working a lot in schools, like I knew like, okay, there's adults in the room and there's young people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm talking to the adults, like, cool, like however you need, fine. But if I'm around your young people, like they got to be comfortable. Like they got to be comfortable, and I'm not necessarily cursing with them and all that other stuff, right? But I'm way more inviting of just however they respond and react to whatever comes up in whatever way, and they might get more of an authentic reaction out of me due to me wanting to, break that wall down, right? Kids got walls, and rightfully so. But thank you for that. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Weigh the costs. I think that do you really
Yeah, this
need,
is something.
like, do you really need what I said before? Like some folks, other folks are trying to keep their job. What is this going to cost you?
Right.
And the flip side to that is, what is it already costing you? Do you feel like you're losing yourself and that's why you need to push the boundaries? I think that's a legitimate question. I mean, many of us have hung into jobs, industries where who we are has not really been taken into account or respected in terms of the way that we would show up as our professional selves, no matter how great we did on the job, because you do know that people can dress, speak a certain way, and still be really good at their job. So that's the other thing that people have to weigh, but weighing the costs. Will this get me fired pushing this boundary? And how do I feel about that? Or is this, I just can't take it anymore, I have to speak up, or I'm never going to be comfortable or truly valued in this place? I think you gotta think about, before you just lose it or decide this is just wrong or arbitrary or stupid, right? I think you got to think about, so what could this cost me, and am I willing to put up with that, to deal
Yeah.
with that?
I think for me, this rings very true, as something I probably should have done more in some situations, right? However, I think, you know, it's valuable because you can be right sometimes in the end. Like at the end of the day, you can be right 1000% in not only feeling disrespected or out of place or whatever, right? Like someone could have actually done so.
Mm-hmm.
And yet still wherever you're trying to go, the goals, right? Especially I think of just any parent, right? And things that they have to deal with like in work outside of just like, their actual parental duties, how they show up there. Yeah, I think about, well, is this going to get the check home, right? Is this going to get my kids fed? Is this going to keep clothes on their back, right? So I think that, sometimes even in your being right, um, having this skill down can really, if not elevate you in one way, save you from something else in another that's not necessarily for you. And I think that in the ways that I've messed up, right, the ways that I've gotten it right, it's completely uh, help me improve as a person when it comes to looking at, just why this, why that, what does that mean? all of these things, right? That questioning, that self-questioning. It's not a bad thing as people make it seem to be. So absolutely.
And then the last one is cultural norms. Hey, certainly when I was growing up, nobody cared about. There was only one culture, and that was the corporate culture or the American culture, right? Right. There was not this. Well, culturally, this is what we do. Like culturally, there are reasons people wear their hair the way braids, right? Or afros. That culturally, that has significance to us, and that was never considered when you're talking about when you're starting looking at the dress codes, what's professional and what's not professional. In fact, shout out to all the Black women who got perms and continue to have perms or wigs because they've been told that natural hair is not professional, and because still to this day there's a problem with it. And so that's an example of a cultural norm. But people that will wear, if you have a yarmulke or if you wear a hijab or something to your culture, right? If you're a Native American and you wear your dress and somebody has a problem with it, cultural norms are really important, I think, in the conversation around what's professional, and can get us to widen the lens on the conversation, because it's a part of who people are. And because you're not used to it doesn't mean that it's not professional.
Right.
And particularly when you're talking about people doing their job well, if they're comfortable in their dress, right, then that only adds to it. I know one of the things that's pushing the boundaries are people who dress in non-binary ways. I mean, it's really making people say some of the things that, to me, I think, look, if you really think about it, you really need to have some conversations about this, because there are many things, again, that people consider not to be within the professional realm that people show when they push these boundaries. It doesn't really have anything to do with being professional. And maybe you think that's wrong. And that's cool. That's why we have this show. That's why we have the conversation, so that people can express why they think professional is even a thing, and what goes into, in your mind, in your company, and in your raising of children, if you're doing that or standing before them and being a role model, what's in your mind about what is really professional and what is not? What's on your desk? With women have always been, there's rules always for women. How short is your skirt? How low is your blouse? How this, that.
I found out recently makeup was a thing for
right? How
y'all
much
for a while.
Right? You're wearing, or if you're not wearing,
right? What is that? What?
It's all there for the conversation, for the discussion to be had, if you're willing to have the discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely second everything you just said on that one. Because I've seen the effects that it has on people when they're stripped of that, when they're stripped of that freedom of expression, knowing that they are a good student or great employee, or they can get the job done, right? If anything, it gets done better, quicker, whatever, when they're the most comfortable. And so when you have that stripped, I've seen how that only feeds the opposite, right? It's like, I don't really want to come here. I don't really want, like, how valued am I? How, is this really, if I look left and look right, am I safe even? Like, that's these are valid questions that come up when you strip people of that opportunity. I think when you give people, the choice, the opportunity, right? That's cool. But, and to see what they do with it and then act accordingly, that's cool, is what I mean. However, to strip them of even the choice, I just don't see that as any way inviting of any way of inviting of, expansion of lens and really what it takes to do that. It takes putting yourself in places that you're not comfortable, places that you don't go often, putting yourself around people that you haven't grown up to be around, right? And haven't been programmed to be around per se. And so all of these things are just very valid and valuable to be had in a conversation and an ongoing one. I think that's the main thing. A lot of people are looking for these one conversations, these one and dones. Let's get an answer now. Things are changing daily. Like, it takes small changes to build up to the big stuff that we see. However, that stuff that's happening is daily. This is daily stuff going on right now that we're talking about. There's someone right now being discriminated for one of the things that we're talking about. At least, right? So when we think about it, like, just asking these questions of ourselves, not being afraid to even just pose them as something to think about for other people. So if I don't want to, because we never want to come at people's expertise or character and all that other stuff, intelligence, right? But I always say something to think about. Have you looked at this, right? Have you thought of this, right? Or where did that come from? When we ask these questions, again, there's a negative connotation around questioning and not taking everything for face value, but I think there's a lot of value in that. So that's my final thought.
My final thought is that you should be having the conversations
for sure.
Because there's a lot that people can add and say. And then we talk about conflict, teaching us about ourselves. Like, you need to investigate why you think the way you do. What is it that you're holding on to as professional that may in fact not really mean anything? It's just something that someone told you was professional or unprofessional. So go on and have the conversations. Look, everybody's working somewhere, interacting somewhere, somehow. Put this at your next meeting. Put it on your next meeting agenda.
Absolutely. That was good stuff. Last thing I'll say is, and this is all from a, outside of the house, outside of the home perspective that I feel like we've talked about, but those things come home with us. So another thing to think about, right? How these things are seeping into even more of the personal aspects of your life. And so thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I think it was a very valuable conversation. I think it's a very great topic. A lot of memories, especially being 10, waking up and wearing suits like that. But again, greater good. I see the value. I see all the other stuff. And we hope that we were able to provide you all with some way of thinking that, you maybe didn't look at before. That's the whole thing. It's the whole point. So please watch us live, comment, shout out Melissa St. Clair. I think
anybody else who's watching that
anyone else, right. Absolutely. We're working out some wave.video kinks, with getting our destinations right. But please, as we say, any view, any share, any like, we truly appreciate. It means the world. And please, on e360tv.com, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, all that good stuff, you can find us, catch us, and check us out. We are also on YouTube, working it out across generations. Absolutely. Also on Facebook, Working It Out TV show. Truly, this has been a pleasure.
Like, follow.
Yes, like, follow, all that good stuff. We'll say it however many times we need to, but truly, this has been really, really good stuff. I appreciate the conversation. I'm learning new things in real time every single time that I log on here. And it's interesting because we live together. So, you think you know everything and all that, but no.
Because you got to have the conversation.
Got to have the conversation.
So we close out with how we always close out, because this is about us learning, right? So we believe that conflict is here to teach us something about ourselves. So go out there and find out what it is.
Absolutely. See you guys next week.
See it.
Working it out across generations. See ya.